Saare. I come from Estonia. In the program, I'm named as representing University of Victoria and Western Washington University. It's because last year I was 5 months as a border fellow in 2 of those universities, but my main job is in Estonia in an NGO, and we work mainly with Estonian-Russian cross-border cooperation. And as we have this large border bodies on the Estonian-Russian border, I mainly work with environmental issues on our border. So, and I am going to talk about Estonian-Russian border, although we have land border also with Latvia, but the Estonian-Russian case is much more interesting than with Latvia, who is also EU member and Schengen country, and so it's not so many interesting things going on. So Estonian-Russian border, it's a EU external border since 2004. And 2/3 of our border goes through this big transboundary lake, Peipsi, and also we have a transboundary river. And we have only 3 land border crossing points. And what is a pity about our region, you can't cross the border by boat. There are no border crossing. It used to be in Soviet time. We had ferry boats going from Estonia, but between Estonia and Russia, but not anymore. Talking about the border crossings, we used to have very long lines on the border, but since some years we have electronic system to manage queuing on the borders. So you basically register yourself online before, and you know what time you should go there. But anyway, it has decreased the waiting times on the borders, but anyway, there is a visa between Estonia and Russia, and this visa issue is still problematic. It's very time consuming. You basically need 2 weeks to get the visa, and it's also expensive. With compulsory insurance, you pay some, let's say around $60. And Estonian consulate in Russia gives easily free visas without any payment, and long-time visas for 2 or up to 5 years. But Russian consulate usually do not give any free visas. So, this border flow of people, of the tourists, we in Estonian side on weekends we see a lot of Russian buses. They just come to shop in Estonian border area shopping centers, but not so many Estonians would go for holidays to Russia. And many Russians use Estonian Schengen visa to go further to other Schengen states in Europe also. So Estonia and Russia border treaty was signed by foreign ministers 5 years ago, but none of the parliaments have ratified it. So basically we still do not have a border treaty between our countries. Cooperation between communities is very largely dependent on unfavorable conditions in international politics. We have the sanctions EU sanctions to Russia, and Russian import ban to our goods. And on the economic level, we have seen that the trade turnover between our countries has shrunk some 50% in recent years. And for our companies, the sanctions have had also a pretty bad influence. So, as I said, the work we do between the communities, between the border communities, it's very largely dependent also on national interstate politics. Here you can see Mr. Putin and our President Kaljulaid, and they met a week ago in Moscow, and the last time our presidents met, it was before Georgia war in 2008, so it has been quite a big step in our politics. And so I brought here two quotes. Putin said that it's a lack of contacts between officials, official bodies, between neighbors. It is not healthy situation. And so how our president replied to that, what were the discussions on the table, that we discussed at length potential solutions of conflicts in Ukraine and Georgia, where the positions of the European and Union are very different. So she's bringing this European politics to our interstate and cross-border cooperation relations. Yeah, we can see this one step that our states maybe are becoming, starting to make progress in cooperation, but on the other side, last year Estonia started to build a new, very high secure fence on the land border, and the main reason is last year we have had a lot of illegal migration, not from Russia, but coming from Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, also Vietnam. So more fences worldwide. So in the border region, we have many different cultures, multi-ethnic, multicultural area. Here you can see Narva, Ivangorod, twin city, Estonian and Russian town, which used to they used to function as a one unit in Soviet time, but not really anymore. Then we have Seto minority, the ladies on the right, and this minority group we have on the both sides of the border. And we have this religious community, old believers. Talking about the Russians in the border region, here we can see a lot of Russian media influence, or these cultures or ideas, they are influenced also a lot by the Russian media. The border region on both sides is rather poor. We don't have no big industries. We have a lot of EU funding last years, which has contributed to the infrastructure development, building the roads, wastewater treatment plants, also culture, tourism development, people-to-people cooperation. But despite of this all EU funding, it's still a poor region. Here I made this photo some years ago when we had the interviews on border communities. This is what the local people do. In summertime, they go and pick berries and mushrooms, and then they sell it to the markets, or the big cars come and collect them. So this is what the people do there. It's a rather rural area, a lot of forest and no industries. And so talking about this border flows, some years ago, the petrol smuggling, it was really a large issue, and many cars, some people crossed the border 5 times a day to sell the petrol. This was the local businessman, but this was then stopped, so it's really not much of anymore. How many minutes I have left? 2 minutes. Some years ago we had another project where we made interviews with local stakeholders, asked about their motivations and about cross-border cooperation and how do they feel about the border. And what came out from the interviews that the Estonians and inhabitants, they often say that they really don't interest what takes place in Russia or other side of the border, and they even don't know how to travel there to their bigger cities. But for Russian border inhabitants, what happens in Estonia and traveling Estonia, it was really important. And as Estonia consulate gives visas very easily, then they use this opportunity and travel often to Estonia. And they feel themselves more Europeans than, they think they are more Europeans than from the other parts of Russia. So as we work a lot with NGOs, we can see that it's really problematic, the civil society organization situation in Russia. They have this, Russia introduced a new NGO law in 2013, and which makes very difficult for NGOs to get foreign money to implement some projects. And they are called, when you get the European Union or US money, you are called as a foreign agent, and you have a certain auditors coming to your NGOs. And really NGOs do not, Russian NGOs do not want to get much involved with these European or US projects anymore. We have, what is facilitating our cooperation is Estonia-Russia Cross-Border Cooperation Program. And here are the priorities. SME development, border management and environmental protection, and environmental protection is really one of our flagship of cooperation.